Hi there, it's Heather Smith with BarrelRacingTips.com. I'm here this morning with what is episode 9 of Pistol's Progress. I'm just leading him here. We just finished up with our session. I don't generally like to multitask with my horse, but I think he can. He knows what he's doing. He's an expert at rolling, that's for sure. So we just had an incredible session, and I'm looking forward to sharing a little bit about what we did. And I have some other ideas to share with you too that have come to my mind lately. So I hope you're doing awesome. Those of you that are tuning in, I would love to hear what your goal is this week. Oh, Pistol. Oh, it's good to just relax, isn't it? Yeah. Time to get up. So, hey Billy, I would love to hear what your goal is with your horse this week, what you're working on. Those of you that are tuning in, that would be awesome. And so we know that last week, or last session, which would have been Monday, I realized I had to backtrack just a little bit and make sure that he was really mentally connected to me and totally relaxed, because I was having to be a little bit firm to get the responsiveness that I wanted, and I had to recreate that balance of the calm relaxation and the responsiveness and having it all at the same time. And so now today I did a little bit of testing and teaching on his whoa and go button. And so I talk about how important this is with our riding a lot on the barrels. Like, if we want to work on advanced things like collection and really specific body position, like, we will never make the kind of progress or get to where the heights of our horse's athleticism if we're having to use our aids and our resources to keep them moving forward or to ask them to slow down constantly. And so anyway, he was a little bit dull about his upward transitions when I would ask him to go. And I really just want him to go with just a subtle lift of my energy and point of my finger. And I was having to back that up with my stick almost every time. And so we worked on that, and he made a really dramatic improvement. It just required me to have really high standards and be consistent. Do you want to get up here and walk alongside of me? So, apologies for the video all over the place. Hey, Mary from New Mexico. Love to see everybody tuning in. Awesome. So, anyway, with, again, I'm like multitasking here, so I held him accountable for maintaining gait. And so I just asked, and basically by refining his upward transition, like his go signal, he was maintaining gait was a piece of cake. And today he just happened to offer me some like amazing movement. So here's the thing to keep in mind. Like, sometimes you've been working on things and working on things and working on things, and your progress might seem a little bit slow, or you feel like you're not getting to where you want to go, but your horse might be kind of absorbing things that you don't even realize until one day they're like, ta-da! See, I was listening this whole time. And they just offer like they make a big leap forward. And so that's so exciting. So I did tons of just rewarding him. And I often use the word good. Like, I use my energy a lot, I smile a lot, but good, like, you can pick a specific word and use that like a bridge so that they know absolutely when they're on the right track when you're teaching them something. And so he did just fantastic. And so here's the other thing I was going to mention is about some tips for hauling your horse, because Pistol has not been anywhere in like months. And so, he's been there, done that as a teenage performance horse. But so to start out, I mentioned my tips for not only making sure, I just want to do a midpoint summary. Not only make sure, like I mentioned on Monday, that you have that calmness and relaxation and mental connection before you're working on anything beyond that. And then at the same time, make sure that your horse is maintaining gait. And like when you ask them to go a certain speed, that they stay at that certain speed without you having to constantly remind them to slow down or speed up, because you're using up the aids that you're going to need to be using to ask and train for that more advanced shape and movement and so forth. So those are things that you'll have to remember and revisit and avoid getting in the habit of micromanaging. And so anyway, back to hauling. So he hasn't been anywhere in a long time, and we actually had our trailer all cleaned out because Craig is going to take it to get an acid wash this weekend. So we didn't have any hay bags full, and it was a little bit inconvenient to go break open an alfalfa bale out of the barn. But one of my best tips for hauling, and I realize, like I take for granted that everybody does this, but it's not necessarily the case. Pistol is not necessarily a horse that has really struggled with ulcers in particular, but any horse is at risk, and they experience stress in ways that we don't always understand or notice. And so there are certain things we can do, action steps, really simple things we can do to just lower the likelihood of them developing some digestive upset, which can just compound and snowball and lead to bigger and more major problems. So I mean, I credit some of the precautions and the steps that I took before I ever left our place for having such a great session here today when he hasn't been anywhere for months. And so I made sure his hay bag was filled with alfalfa, and it's like a short trip. We like never ever go anywhere, even if it was like a couple miles, without hay in the hay bags in the trailer. And normally it's like a combination of grass and alfalfa, but really quick I threw in some alfalfa. The reason that can be good is that there's extra calcium in alfalfa, which can kind of help maybe buffer their excess stomach acid a little bit. And you know, it makes the hauling experience, so it gives them something to do. And then I want him, like if I'm taking him away from his horse friends, he hasn't been anywhere in a long time, I want there to be some incentive and something good in it for him. And he's really food motivated, so he's like, I guarantee I'm probably gonna have to come here and ride on Friday too. And he is going to be looking forward to jumping in the trailer just because I made sure there was some alfalfa in there, which is a big treat because right now his workload isn't very high. He's not getting much of it on a day-to-day basis. So that's something to keep in mind. Always, always, always hay in the trailer. And the other thing we always do, even though we have a padded, some foam underneath the rubber mats in our trailer, we always haul with front padded hoof boots, Easy Care or Easy Boot gloves. And this just helps lessen the vibration from the road and makes it a little less wear and tear on their joints and their feet and everything. Even if it's a short trip, we always boot them up. And so as far as when I first got here, he was like a little bit looky, not terrible or anything. And oh, the other thing we did this morning when Craig fed, I asked him to give Pistol in his feed a heaping scoop of the maintenance supplement that .com is on for to prevent ulcers with him, who is more tend to have them. So I asked Craig to put a heaping scoop of that in Pistol's feed this morning, just to lessen the likelihood of him having an overload of that, you know, stomach. So these are all precautions that I take for this little trip. But you know, it all adds up, it all compiles. Like because of those little steps I took, I'm really setting him up for success, and I'm making the likelihood for us to be able to keep progressing every day, to make everything a positive experience for his behavior, to be like, for him to be just on his game. And then all those positive sessions just add up and add up and add up. But he was an absolute rock star today. And these little steps I took could be a big reason why. And so the other thing I was going to mention that came to mind this week is to make sure with your goals with your horses that when it comes to life balance and our schedules, to absolutely make sure that you're leaving margins in your days and you're not overextending yourself, because it's going to show up and you're going to shortchange your horse in so many ways with the real being in the moment and present with them and giving them the time they need to process. So often with training, like some of the really deepest lessons that they absorb occur when they've made a breakthrough and when we feel like we have the time to just sit there and just let them soak. And if we feel like when we're in a rush, we're not going to give our horses those opportunities, and it's just like we're going to be spinning our wheels. And so like this week, my email was having issues. I spent like several hours on that. I ended up watching my brother-in-law roping on the live feed at the Reno Million yesterday. There's just all these things that like I wasn't really anticipating coming up. And if we don't have a little bit of leeway and some buffer and margins in our life for those things, like there are things we need that come up, like that need maintenance that we can expect, like regular things, but there's always unexpected things. And if we overextend ourselves, our margins are going to be so narrow that we're going to be just pushed to the absolute limit to just keep up on the day-to-day stuff, and then it's going to like totally throw us off track when some of those unexpected things come up. And like I said, our horses are not going to progress, and they're not going to get the best of us like they deserve to be, and we'll just be in this perpetual cycle of feeling like we're backsliding or we're behind and trying to catch up. And so that was something that came to me this week, just because, not that I have this nailed down perfectly, but because I thought, wow, maybe I should have a little more. I mean, this is something I've been working on for years, but maybe we should have even a little more margin than I already do. So, yay, I'm just catching up on comments. So, hello from Louisville, Kentucky. Awesome. So yeah, and Pistol had a little bit of an audience today. A couple of horses. I would just turn him loose. There's a couple horses out on the perimeter of the arena in the return alley, and so just to be safe, I'm just kind of hand walking him. And at one point, he was really kind of looking at those other horses. And what I did when your horse gets distracted and loses focus, what I did for him was I just kept doing like an S, like it's like a figure eight that never really closed, or yeah, it does actually close. But I'm walking backwards, and it's like like an S, where I'm asking him to figure eight around, and I'm walking backwards, and basically they keep having to change direction and then focus on me. Change direction, so he might, like when he comes around in that figure eight, he might want to look over at the other horses, but then when he comes around and he locks in on me, and then I'm like, good, and then he goes around and he might get distracted for a second, and then he comes around and locks focus with me, and I'm like, good. I just want to remind him that being with me physically and mentally is the best place to be in the whole world. And then I set it up so that he didn't spend a lot of time like locked on and focused on something else. So I don't want my horse to practice what we don't want. So between the little tips for hauling, the little tips for the foundational things that we want to make sure are really solid. Oh, I was going to mention, and then the thing I was going to mention about making sure we've got buffer and margins in our schedule and our days so we can really give our horses our best. The other thing I was going to mention was how amazing his loping was. Like, phenomenal. Like, he was like self-rating. Like, he was just gathering himself up and picking himself up. He wasn't like strung out. And he was like elevated and flexed at the pole. And let me tell you, you can create all of this without any mechanics. And he already knows to be like long and low, and now we're working on advancing it, elevating it, and bringing it up and a little deeper in the hind end, and it was just phenomenal. And we've been working on it a little bit when we could here and there, and today he just like offered it. like put it together, and it was so amazing. So maybe I will offer some tips for creating that kind of quality movement on Friday. So we might come back to the indoor arena here again then, I'm not sure. We'll see how our ground is. But anyway, this has been fun checking in with you. Pistol's progress, session number 9. He did amazing. And he looks like he's wearing a mask because the dirt is really fine here and kind of old and really powdered sugar and light colored. So any amount of extra grooming that I need to do is worth him having his having a good roll after an amazing session. So Mary had a question. Yeah, triple digit heat. So I was going to mention too regarding that. I also plan ahead for myself. I brought a big carrot that I can eat on the way home, because having some like starchy vegetables is a good idea to replenish glycogen stores for us. And then I put some electrolytes, some I think it's called Highlight, in my water bottle for myself. So that's really important for us. Yeah, Athena, he's a character. Yeah, so as far as hydration for horses, we feed salt in their feed every day. And so that keeps that consistent level in their feed, makes sure that their electrolyte levels are staying where they need to be. And so we don't necessarily do a lot of specific electrolytes on game days, but on race days. But I am looking into creating my own custom pre-race paste recipe. And then one thing you can think about, especially when this comes to like helping your horse recover, think about giving your horse a little bit of feed like within an hour or so after their run to replenish their glycogen stores, especially, and this is most important on weekends when you have like 3 runs 3 days in a row. So we can talk more about that another time, but that's all I've got for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's always a blast, and we will be back on Friday with more of Pistol's Progress. We'll see you then.